let's start with your biggest marketing win or like a mad moment that's happened in your career. The one thing that's kind of made you, I don't know, say,
It was called.
this is why I fucking do this job, essentially.
It was called Marketers in Pajamas, and no one wants to talk about COVID, but it was when that hit. We were super quick in doing a video content series where we were streaming into the bedrooms and kitchens of the world's brightest minds in marketing. So these were global CMOs from Netflix, Adobe, we had Amazon, Vice, Gymshark. We even had Seth Godin, right? So these were these were superstars, and it was just this fun where no one was doing rough and ready UGC Zoom videos, right? So no one was broadcasting those. And so that was a massive novelty that you would record an interview via a laptop or a computer. Now, everything's sort of boring in hindsight, but you've got to imagine that as soon as the world crumbled, we were very quick to reach out to our marketing community. And what very suddenly happened was we became this very dependent community where people really needed us as part of their outlet, their expression. And also, it was probably the only time in history we would ever see or witness the entire world respond to the exact same creative brief. And that creative brief was called CV19. It was like everyone's hit with the exact same problem, right? All at once. It didn't matter if you were selling hand soap or cars. You first had to engage people where they were at. And so it was amazing to see how everyone just responded in a completely different way. And it was all out in the open, and you could see that. And what's more is people didn't know what the rules of engagement were. So these are the best marketers, the most awarded marketers with the biggest brands on the planet were telling you how they were pivoting and moving and how they were ripping up the playbook and being superhuman. And so we launched this thing, and we must have had 50 episodes, right? So every week, and we were doing compilations and the social clips would go online. Facebook ended up sponsoring it and paying Tribe, which I was just doing at home, a ton of cash really from their marketing trade, because they were also trying to pivot and how do we reach people? They wanted to be seen as a trusted voice because at that time their brand was quite toxic before they did the bait and switch with Meta rebranding. But it was just, we were getting paid to build a community. And what's more is we were having these interviews with these absolute superstars from brands that were staying on after the interview going, tell me more about what you guys do. And so we would never get a coffee with them. It was actually easier getting a video content series because it was a novel thing before obviously the whole world moved in that direction.
Yeah. There's a really there's a saying, I don't know the exact saying, but if you're the host of the party, it's much easier getting people inviting someone to your party than it is trying to go the other way around it. And if you've got the cool party and people want to come and be involved, that kind of gravity effect of you being what people want to be involved with, changes the dynamic from, hey, can I get a coffee, where people are meh, where to this dynamic where I say to you, do you want to be on my podcast? And people are like, yeah, I'd love to be on the podcast. You shift the power dynamic almost.
But Danny, we're mates, so that's easy. But what I reckon so many people figured out was that you could never get a coffee with people, and then having a podcast was an hour that was intimate, where they were almost elevated and nervous. No one had their guard up. And so I reckon people after a while went, I don't even give a shit about listeners, because I don't even care if this podcast airs. I've just had this serious galvanized moment with this person for my business. And so then, you know, after a while, every one of those people that you target, because everyone now has podcasts, I don't know how people deal with it. How do they manage being interviewed on so many podcasts when people are sort of launching them. So it was amazing.
Nice. You alluded to it a little bit there, but I'll let you do an intro, like for anyone that doesn't know who you are. Maybe give us your elevator pitch of your career and I guess what you've been up to recently.
Okay. So I was a really shitty, ratty teenager that got in a lot of trouble and was getting booted out of school. This guy came to do a talk. He was from a youth organisation, but he was a shit hot celebrity footballer, big celebrity here that I didn't know about because I didn't follow footy. And anyway, I ended up following this guy around because he could just command audiences, and he'd go and do these sort of, I suppose, life coaching motivational talks. And he ended up working with, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. I just learnt his craft by following him around forever. And then I started very early running these workshops. And I did it for sort of 10, 15 years. A lot of what I was talking about was like, what sort of life would you choose to live if you couldn't fail? And they would say to me, what would you do? So, being a smart ass, I was like, all right, I want to work in TV, get paid millions of bucks, flying business class, having the most death-defying, once-in-a-lifetime adventures on the planet. And there was a show called Getaway, which was a prime time institution every Thursday night. And I said, I want to be the adventurous host on that. So I wrote down on a piece of paper all the things I'd have to do. And I started to do them, like, read autobiographies, do every TV presenter's course, get a personal trainer, do memory learning courses, all this shit. And then I had a crack, and I basically created a show reel that, most people, I can see it right now. Most people spend about $500. This is VHS days, right? And I spent 10 grand. And it was my first marketing gig where I marketed myself. And I just did it instinctively. I said, all right, what are the 3 things I want people to say back? Like if someone said, who's that guy? What are the top 3 things? What those brands were. And, for it I was like cheeky, healthy, and insightful, right? So I made everything about that, the photography. I hired the actual TV crew. It was all legit. And then within eight months of my 12-month journey, they gave me the plum gig. And so I did that for 10 years, and I hosted like the red carpet for, 10 years as well. And just launched into stardom, really. I mean, I was just a wanker wanting fame and fortune. And I quickly got it, and then realized, well, all that awesome stuff I used to do out in my school workshops, that was more fulfilling. So I was sort of always wanting to get back to that type of work. But I went from TV into radio, and I did radio for 5 years, and that was really fun and successful. It was a big national show. And then from that, a lot of my ideas were quite visual because I'd gone from TV into radio, and the radio host would go, they can't see you, mate. You why don't you go and spend all that visual OCD into our social media platforms? So that was 2010. And no brands, no media companies, no one was really in Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. So we went into it, and because I was sort of visual and I was a smart ass and understood marketing, we very quickly built the most engaged Facebook brand page in the country for my radio show. And we were reaching more people, and it was a bigger brand on social than it was on air, even though we had millions of listeners. Because I was able to reach people all around the world, whereas our frequency only went there, and we were only on 2 hours a day, whereas I realized that on Facebook, I could put content there 24 hours a day and engage people 24 hours a day. So I very quickly pivoted from I was like, let's focus on these guys like they're fans, not listeners. And let's not talk to them, did you hear the radio show? Like, just separate it. It's its own channel. And so that was sort of revolutionary at the time here in our industry. So I started to consult on how to engage these social tribes to all the media agencies and brands. They were realizing, the mobile is threatening all our TV and radio and print ads. So they said, we're going to do more of this. They knew I could create content. So I was inundated with sponsored post requests, and I made a couple of $100,000 in about 18 months, and I wasn't even that good. So they were like, all right, how do we do more of this? And I said, there was no such thing as influencer. We were calling them citizen marketers because they were all saying, all the brands, they were saying, we want to work with a pop star, an actor, a footballer, someone on a reality show. And I was saying their content is shit, right? So you'll spend $5,000 on someone who was on The Bachelorette. She didn't create that audience from thousands of posts on social, right? She got it because she was on TV and then she looked down. So you can pay $5,000 for a really bad piece of content, or you can get 30 of these nobodies, you know, that have 5 or 10,000 or 30,000 that don't even realize they can make money yet. So this is the era that no one was making money. So you had there was armies and armies of generous people that were just doing it because they wanted to express their passion for food or fashion or fitness. Anyway, they're the best
influencers as well.
Yeah.
They're the best influencers to work with, the ones that accidentally do it.
Exactly. Well, they were all accidentally. And I was sick of celebrities and I didn't want to work with popular people. I wanted to work with creators. So I said, you can have 30 of them. You get the same size audience, you know, than this celebrity that might have 5 million followers, but you've got far higher engagement. And now you have 30 pieces of awesome content that you can repurpose as your ads. And they said, well, how am I going to manage 30 people? And I said, I'll create an app. And Tribe was born. And we've now paid out about $50 million to everyday people. And we've worked with, you know, all the biggest brands around the globe. And we're in different regions. So that's sort of what I'm doing now. I've stepped out of it from a day-to-day point of view. I'm leading from the board. And funnily enough, I'm going back to my life coaching, back to radio and back to TV, because those things sort of light me up. And so now I'm able to do a bit of everything I love.
Wow. Some journey. I can't help but love I want that job. So like, not fake it till you make it. Because I think sometimes that gets a bad rap, but I do like that as a saying sometimes, like just act like you're going to get the job. Like take the approach that they would take to it. Don't spend 500, spend 10 grand and put yourself in it. And something to be said for just kind of fucking going for it and going all out for it. So that's such a cool story. I think people will love that.
Thanks, buddy.
I was going to ask what the weirdest turn your career took, but not weird, but all of them are kind of zigzagging. So I feel like that it was interesting to listen to the way that happened. I guess I'll pivot a little bit. As you kind of said, you've kind of jumped from being day-to-day in Tribe to kind of board level now, and you're kind of doing a bit more, like you said, on TV and radio and the coaching and that kind of stuff. What is something that you're trying to figure out right now? It can be in marketing, it could be just generally like within kind of what you're doing business-wise, but like what's something right now that you're kind of scratching your head at, how you want to, I don't know, take a new approach or a new spin on something?
Okay, I haven't really said this out loud that much, but
okay.
But let me just have a stab at it. So while I was doing the school talks, and I was 20, right? I won a competition on radio, and it was called 15 Days of Fame. And for 15 days, they just took me from obscurity and just put me in front of everyone. I was driving around in a 30-foot limousine, staying in a $4,000 a night apartment. I was in fashion shoots in the print. I was interviewing Big Brother stars. I was on TV. I was on radio all day, every day. And it was like this, it was just a tacky tactic. But at the end of it, they said, shit, there's a big following for you. And we want to give you any radio show you wanted. And so, because I was doing all this life coaching stuff with young people, I was like, I want to try to do that on air. And so like, how do I talk about really important, meaningful stuff for people that are super hungry, but they don't know where to start. And they also have their own doubts and they're not sure if this is the passion they want to invest in. And they don't know how to build confidence. They don't know how to ask, you know, or find a mentor. So there was just all these dynamics, a bit like the hero's journey in some ways, Joseph Campbell's. But I just was like, what does that look like on air? Now, the format I came up with was called Dash. And the idea was the 2 dates on your tombstone are not nearly as important as the dash in between. Spend it wisely. And so the idea of the radio show was that I would get successful people from around the world. They like Mandy Moore was a pop star. I had entrepreneurs that had built, global brands. I had adventurers that sailed around the world when they were 16. I had footballers, actors, you name it. And the idea behind it was not to break down what they've achieved, but how. And it was inspired by this show at the time I think it was called Inside the Actors Studio. And I only had it on, I only had it on VHS that my friend would send me because, and it was really emotional. They would, James Lipton would sit down with these, like Ed Harris or, Matthew McConaughey and talk about the craft. And it wasn't glitzy or glamour. It wasn't a talk show. It was slow and real. And so I was like, I want it to be like that. And so I would ask them questions like, what's been your toughest challenge? What's been your biggest win? Now, it never got sponsored and it never really worked. We did it for 18 months. And we were trying to talk about like heartfelt things where people were getting emotional, but you had to squeeze it between Pink and Nickelback in a 3.5-minute slot that was followed up with Subway ads, right? So ironically, now every single podcast is almost that. So, and it's now got niche, right? Or niche, So the idea is now, you just reach out to people that have been successful and say, oh, how did you do it? And they get emotional and all that. And so what I'm thinking now and what I'm trying to figure out is, how do I then elevate that to another level? Because I love Anthony Robbins, right? I'm not a fanboy, but I love that energy of motivational speakers that used to have as evangelists, and they would be around the world, and now they're all on podcasts or they're doing social. But I want to create immersive, theatrical, meaningful, powerful, inspiring things that we used to have in film that we no longer do. Like we had all the Bravehearts or the, 8 Miles. It's very rare now you walk out of a cinema with your fist in the air. You just don't get pumped up. It's sort of, I don't know what's happened. I suppose Marvel, but there's the human stories like a Shawshank Redemption or Power of One. That was my era. I'm a lot older, or Dead Poets Society.
No, I know what you mean though.
Yeah. So what I dream of is, and what I'm trying to figure out is, now that the world is ready for that content and we see podcasts really elevating that, and people will listen for hours to their favorite podcast series that shares vulnerability and the human spirit, trying to become great. Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what that looks like in a both a scalable way, like a video series, which everyone's sort of doing. Like you've got Diary of a CEO, and it's all the same. It's all just the same shit, really. How do you then do the next thing to that that creates something truly magical? And I think it's, they're stadiums all the way down to small rooms that really create a third space that isn't professional, that isn't personal. It's a place where you get to work on parts of your life, because therapy's too expensive and it's hard to get in. And there's got to be something between that and going for a walk with your mate. There's another world where you can work on all of these. So that's sort of what I'm playing with. And there'll be a time, Danny, and I've flagged you because I, save a lot of your videos. When it comes time where I've got to activate that, I'm just, mate, the favor is going to be flipped.
In my head, I'm already like, everyone's doing the big person that's already made it. I think right now there's such a big opportunity, and I'm seeing it already with like younger creators, where they're almost like, they're starting now documenting their journey from rags to hopefully riches. Yeah. And I think so many of them have started and they're filming and they're like, I'm going to build a business. And they're just, that's the first video. And I'm going to build a business. And they try and document the whole thing. I think it'd be amazing if you were to, because like you think about like Shark Tank or Dragon's Den or these things where people get they get like a mentor or an investor or whatever, and they
Yeah.
help try and guide them. You never see what actually fucking happens in that
Yeah.
meeting where they get an hour with Stephen Bartlett or whoever
Yeah.
it is. I think showing that, or even like having that level of behind the scenes, people always want to see behind the curtain, right? That's why they want to listen to these conversations. They feel like there's going to be something in there that's going to be their silver bullet that's going to really help them take what they're doing to the next level.
Yeah.
I always had this idea as well of potentially like getting creators on social media that were not huge, but like, I don't know, under 100,000 followers, and we're like up and coming, taking them and then getting massive creators to come and almost sit with them and kind of critique, but in like a productive way. Like, oh, if you'd have switched this hook around, or if you post 6 times a day versus 3, or whatever, like those kind of like only insights you're going to get from someone that's like on it constant, that you'd get some really interesting content, and the value would be in those conversations. So I feel like you could take someone with a business or with an idea, or someone that just shows a bit of like an up and comer, like at these talks.
Yeah, you've got the brand. I mean, you got Logitech.
That kind of thing could be cool.
Yeah, you should be being that broker, that connector. Do it in like, you imagine that series, which is sort of like Masterclass. I watched Masterclass, which is just high end insights from Steven Spielberg, all the way down to producers, writers, composers. I did one for Gen AI the other day. I thought it was pretty rough, but you can imagine what that looks like, where you get those mentors to break that down. You imagine that's gold dust, because they're not actually speaking to the young bloke in front of you. They're speaking to all of the audience that are hanging on every word.
Yeah, to everyone. But I feel like sometimes when someone tells their story, or they're like, you always get this where someone's like, I don't know, what do I do in my life? And it's always like someone that's made it, and they're like, you just need to try a load of different things and blah, blah, blah. Sometimes all that stuff isn't something that people can actually go and do, right? Like,
no.
Or like, that's the way they did it. But I think sometimes that thing of sitting with one person and like breaking down what they could do, how they could change things up, try this for 6 weeks, and then you come back and you review it. But that would be the video. The whole thing would be from start to where they get to, and I just think that that journey would be really good. I'm gonna jump because there's loads of stuff I want to ask you. So I'm gonna jump around, because otherwise I'm gonna keep talking about this cool idea, and I'm gonna hijack your idea. What do you see in the kind of when you're in and around marketing, or what kind of the things you're up to right now? Like what's overrated, and what do you think's underrated right now?
Okay. I'll be quick on the overrated. I just think the whole AI avatar, which, was a couple of years ago at Cannes Lions, they brought out on TikTok, I just think that's shit. I don't give a fuck. Like, I just don't give a fuck about watching a cartoon version of someone that, I get it. There's a look and a feel, right? We've nailed the look. But no one's nailed the feel. And with Gen AI, and they will, I want to be tricked, I look forward to being tricked, right? I'll take my hat off and go, fucking awesome, right? Bravo. But I think we underestimate the chasm there of what it takes to look good and then to actually move us like a human does. Right, to really move us, to make us care, in films. And I just don't think that even sort of, AI influences, and why a creator would need to do that or want to do that. I think it's disrespectful. Like, if you don't have the fucking time to talk to me, then don't. Like, I don't know. I just think that's all a bit of bullshit. And I've seen a lot of like, and you have too, but like these voice assistants, like I've talked at every conference. Like, I was banging on about influencers before, mate. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how early it was, and trying to get people's head around it, and it was exhausting. But I'd be at every conference, going, "Hey guys, look at this is," and they would all be pumping other stuff, and every year there was another, bit of buzz, or a bit of hype. And, voice assistants came and went, and, people still sort of use them, but they were going to take over the whole world. And, people weren't going to look at visual ads ever again. They were all going to be sort of sonic branding. And, I spent thousands of bucks on AR and VR domains, right? Because I thought VR porn, AR sex. Like, I just thought the whole world, we were all just going to be wearing these goggles, 24 hours. You get on a plane, there'd be 20 people with them. And that just hasn't stuck either. And so I get that we're still ahead of our time. And NFTs, I never understood. And my investors were going, how can you guys be a content platform and not be investing in NFTs? And I said, because I don't fucking get them. And if I don't fucking get them, like I understand that I don't really understand crypto that much as well, but at least I understand why it exists, because banks are crook and they're ripping us off at every way, shape and form, right? But so I understand the fundamental need and the solution, but NFTs I didn't get. So when it comes to AI avatars, it's just people jumping it at it's just more fluff, and everyone's trying to own it, and then all of a sudden it just moves away, and no one goes back and go, oh, good on you, dickhead, you owned it, you were first to market. But my thing is, just because the technologists or the platforms are excited doesn't mean that people are. And trends are born out of humanity. If the humans want it and are pushing for it, put money behind it. But if you're not seeing them drive it, because I don't reckon they're the ones driving the metaverse. I don't think they're the ones driving VR. Yeah. So that's a pretty good bet to go, actually, those guys are getting invested with millions to make it succeed. But if people aren't pushing it for them, it doesn't exist. Sorry. Too long?
No. I think that, no. The avatar thing's really interesting, because I just think AI's in a lot of instances too perfect. And we were just speaking about ideas for content and stuff like that before that. And like, the grind is the bit that, like you said, the dash, that's the interesting bit, not the start and finish. And that's what AI does. It takes something and it finishes it. Yeah. You don't see that middle bit with AI. And that's the interesting bit, the falling over, getting back up again, all of that shit. That's life, right? Not start, finish. And that's what AI does right now. And that's why I think those avatars lack connection, because there's no grind. There's no, I've had a shit day today. Like, it doesn't feel real. It's everything's perfect. I think until they figure that out, I think I said this, I was speaking at an event, and I said this, I think with like double down on just being you. I've been using the term uniquely you, but like, being you is the superpower right now, because AI can't copy how fucking weird you are, basically. Like, and how you fell over and you fucked this up, and I don't know, I swore and I couldn't remember what I was meant to say on the podcast. Like, AI can't do that. And that's what endears people to people, right? Is like the truth and being real. And I just think AI can't do that yet. I'm sure at some point it will be tripping over and whatever. Like, well, I've seen the Boston Dynamics robots fall over, but like, now it's perfect and it doesn't, right? Which then makes it weird, because it's too robotic. And that's where we're at. I think AI is just going start to finish, and you're not seeing that middle bit. And that's why, like, I think people don't connect with it yet. Yeah, I do think it will happen though. But
I do too. What's
something you think? What's something you think's underrated?
Social search. So we know that like a huge percentage of young people don't use Google. They go straight into the social platforms to search what's a great book, where's a good restaurant. Yet Google, we've spent decades and billions of dollars to get on the first page of that. So, for instance, if a young person wants to get travel insurance for their backpacking trip and they go travel insurance options, if you go into Google, right, the only people that can compete on that first page, and no one goes to the second, but even if you did, you're not going to the third. Those people have spent the most amount of money or built the biggest amount of resource to invest in their SEO strategy, right? So it's hard to compete there. Yet, young people aren't even effing going there. So now you go into TikTok and you go, hang on a sec, someone types in there, what's the best travel insurance? It's a blank canvas. There's literally nothing there, especially in the low engagement categories. So like boring crap. You could, any brand on the planet right now could go into TikTok Symphony or goes into Google Trends and says, what are the top 10 search terms, questions about travel insurance? It'll be like, do I need travel insurance if I buy something on a credit card? Do I, whatever it is, it'll answer those things. You literally just have to get any mofo. It could be you, your friends, your family, employees, to just go with a thumbnail, you know, do I still need to buy travel insurance if I pay for it on my credit card? Because on credit cards, sometimes you get free travel insurance. If that's the search term, answer that in text and then just answer the question, leading them all the way through. If you get in there now, which is just absolutely a ghost town, as each person comes there, they're going to watch your video because it's up the top, and you're going to build equity, and that people will not be able to catch you. You will own like the page 1 of Google, but you'll do it in TikTok or Instagram. And so I would be getting 50 of the top questions, and I would be getting creators and I'd be paying them to answer those questions and be helpful with you and insightful.
You as a brand.
No one's doing that. You type it into TikTok, just basic dumb questions. Like, it's just like, there's nothing there.
Oh, no. I can give you, I've done this. I have 3 videos on my TikTok that have over 300,000 views. I have a video that gets about 2,000 views a day. I posted it 2 years ago on TikTok.
Yeah.
Still to this day, honestly, I'll open TikTok right now. I'll have comments, likes, and whatever on this video that's 2 years old because I tailored it for search as an experiment, and it's gone mad. It's had over 500,000 views, and it is the most boring question around social media. I think it was like, how do I untag myself from a picture on Instagram? Like, that was the question, and I just did a video demoing it. Literally a screen record of me talking over the top. I get comments every day on that video still, and there's other videos that do that. So it's not even like short term, like you said. It's long term. So people are discovering me via that as an expert in social media or whatever it might be, maybe potentially. And then, they discover you as a brand. I think you do that at scale. Right now, you've probably got like a year before everyone else goes crazy on it. But you could be the biggest brand because, that is where that, and I think people are still trying to figure out AI, SEO, like, and how do I, when someone puts that, those are the 2 platforms where people, the younger people are now looking, right? They're asking ChatGPT, what's the best, whatever, travel insurance, or they're going on TikTok and looking at travel insurance. So that, I love that one. That one's amazing. I have a hot topic. I try and do this every week and bring something a bit different. Interesting move. Insta just kind of announced that basically they're going to prioritize Reels and DMs. So apparently they're going to reorganize. As someone that's worked with Instagram a lot, I thought you might have an interesting thought on this or how someone can leverage it. But apparently the app layout is being reorganized to make Reels and DMs more accessible. I think Reels are already quite accessible. Like, they're down there on that bar at the bottom. Like, I feel like that to me feels like it might move that to the main feed. But what do you think about that as a move from Instagram?
Look, that's where their growth's coming from. So most usage is Reels and DMs and then recommendations. And so they've got another move as part of this, which is you can fine tune your algorithm by telling it things you do and do not like, which I think is really great. I think the UI changes on the main screen are pretty subtle. I'm surprised they're getting headlines over it. Essentially, what they've removed is the plus button down the middle at the bottom, which was you being able to post in any format. That plus button is now going in the top left. In the top right, which is where you usually have your DMs in a speech bubble, that's now down the front. And then you can swipe, just, swiping left and right, which you can do already. So you can go from Reels to that. Look, it's I get pretty cynical these days with social platforms, and I just I get cynical because, and I don't want to be a bitch about it, and I'm worried that you'll post this and it'll bite me on the ass, but
Yeah, I'll clip this.
it's just a, it's just oh man, working with the social platforms, and they're not humans because they just move on anyway, right? Because they just get overworked, and then they, like all the people I've worked with, they just keep moving on. The machine just keeps going, but there's just so many promises, and just the innovation in these social platforms is pretty shite. I reckon, most of the good platforms have either stolen ideas or bought them, and their failures are in the hundreds and their successes are minimal, and they're just mining what many others have perfected and launched, everything from stories to DMs to reels. Like it's all similar stuff. But as we know, it's all just becoming the same platform, meaning like it's the same experience. LinkedIn, it's almost like it's the same tech and UI. It's just got different people in it. Like, so LinkedIn has a different conversation. It's a bit like WhatsApp, right? You go from group to group in WhatsApp. So I'll go there with my bogan mates, and this filthy crap that you'd never want to. And then I'm in there with it. I just did a silent meditation retreat, so I'm with all these spiritual people. Like if you took what my mate said and I said that same shit in that. So my point is, and then I've got like a dodgeball group for the community.
Everyone behaves different on different platforms, in different groups and different tribes almost. So no, I get you completely. So
it's now all the platforms are now just, I go to Instagram for those people. I go to LinkedIn for those people. I go to Snap for that reason. I go to TikTok for that reason. Like it's pretty weird though, isn't it? It's all just the same vertical video, which has just eaten the world.
Yeah. That is one thing that if you're creating content, we're in an amazing situation right now, which we've never been in, having been in social for over 10 years now, is that one video I can post on all platforms. It's good and it's bad. It's good if you're a creator, because it used to be that I'd have to do text on Twitter, then an image on Instagram, then a video on TikTok, then a long form video on YouTube. Whereas now I can take one thing, maybe chop it up into shorter, and then put it out on all the platforms. Like that's a weird like quirk that comes along every now and again. But
Danny,
I've got go on, sorry.
But Danny, just as it's made it easier to not have to do that individually, we already had AI. So you could have just, like, if we had AI 10 years ago, you could have just gone, here's the video, give me 5 versions for the different platforms. And it would have just gone click, clack, click, changed the text, and would have done all that. So that text finally arrived and we no longer need it.
I've got one last question. I titled the podcast ROI or Die, as it's always like one of the hottest questions, like what's this going to get me back in the market?
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing. That's like, I guess, like be all and end all for some. But like what's the one hill that you'll die on when it comes to marketing? What's one thing that you'll always put your flag in and stand behind?
I've worked in TV, radio, podcasts, social, on stage, right? A lot of different mediums. And I still don't feel that creativity will ever move someone more than just being straight up honest. And so I loved influencer marketing. I always saw influencers eye level. I never cared about the aspirational celebrities and the popular. I just didn't give a shit about that. I wanted it to be like word of mouth marketing at scale rather than celebrity endorsements. Mm-hmm. Sadly, popular influencers, the megas, the macros, they all just became like celebrities, and it all just became financially motivated and just became all a bit wanky. We now actually work with employees. We go into big retailers like Waitrose, and we actually identify and then train their own employees to do all of their content because they know the products better than anyone. And then you have a mom and we do this all around the world. We've got one of the biggest financial companies on the planet here in Australia. So it works really well. So I love just everyday people. But we used to do radio ads and everyone would sit around and go, what's the creative angle for this? And how do we come at this? And I'd just go, just fucking tell them it's great. And just tell them it's great. And so what we would do was, it was for like a budget airline that was going to Bali. And I was like, just rather than come up with a creative and couple of actors, let's just get the staff to walk into this room. I'm going to have a microphone. I'm just going to ask, what was your best memory of, what's your best adventure in Bali? And the authenticity of, oh, mate, we went out for this night. Oh, we were riding this elephant. We were doing this. And we just cut those up into 45-second stories. And it was just real, authentic. People could hear that it was not staged. And it just brought to life the place that we were promoting. And then it was tagline for the budget airline. I just still don't think anything's better than that. So then when social came along, I was just like, I just want to do that. I just want people to say they're using the product, they're trustworthy, I like you, you're relatable, you're a bit like me, and it's been positive. Like, let's not get overly over the top. And so for me, no matter what happens in advertising, it should just not drift too far away from you saying to me, mate, got to listen to this podcast or you've got to use this microphone. Actually, I wouldn't believe you on the microphone because you're getting paid by Logitech. But, if you said to me, you've got to buy this skateboard that has Han Solo on it.
No, I think it's such a good point because one of my favorite things that I ever heard was like Gary Vee, massive speaker and social media personality. But one of the things he said a few years ago now, which I always reference, is he said, document, don't create. And I think what you've just said is that essentially, right? Take someone's real life thing and film that. Don't try and force, like you said, two actors to talk about some made up trip in Bali. Like the real person's emotions. And going back to the AI thing we were talking about earlier, like you can do that with AI now, and it's going to be really wooden and like this kind of story that doesn't sound real. Whereas if you get someone that does have natural pauses and this awkward silence for a second in their story, that's believable. Whereas like the polished stuff, and you're seeing that with social, right? With UGC, the rise of UGC, like that is that in real life, right? So no, I completely agree. It's a really good call out, and that document. Don't create is such a good way of thinking about it.
No matter what angle you come from and how much pressure you're under to reach your targets, I just think come back to the simplicity, right? You can spend a ton of time and a ton of energy on being fancy and overly creative. I think agencies winning awards needed to do that, but I actually just think to move people, it can be a lot more straight up. And that's, as I say, I've been in influencer marketing since before there was influencer marketing, and it hurts me that even that authentic space got a lot of wankers.
I appreciate you using British terms on a British guy on a podcast. One last question, or just I guess for people listening who've enjoyed this. Where can people follow you and follow your work, Jules?
It's Jules Lund at Instagram and LinkedIn, and then tribegroup.co is our tech platform. And it's really changed since we first started working with you. We work with like big enterprises now on sort of yearly or a few years subscriptions and partnerships. So when we started, it was just like anyone with a sort of cafe or whatever could throw themselves in there. But I've really enjoyed where it's going, and we're doing some amazing work. So it's been great to work alongside you over the last decade, mate. Are you going to explain how I thanked you first and foremost? You were so generous. I think you helped us out getting the Facebook partnership because we needed some of your insights and your testimonial, and I sent you an email having never met you, and everyone had just talked about how generous you were and what a great legend you are. And I was just like, how do I thank this guy? And I said, mate, I'm in Australia, you're in the UK, but next time I go over there, I'm going to take you out for a drink until you shit yourself and lose a shoe.
To this day, that is the best email I've ever had. And I think I told people, me and you joined me on a panel on stage. I think I maybe even told that story there. But like, yeah, that is one of the best and most memorable emails I've ever got. Yeah, I'll get you so drunk you'll shit yourself and lose a shoe. That's how Jules thanks people, apparently.
I mean, that night, you never lost a shoe.
Yeah. Thanks, Jules. I appreciate it so much. We'll end on that amazing note.